The Cortez City Council work session. Today is Tuesday, November 25th, 2025, and the time is 6:45 p.m. I'd like to call this session to order and start with A on our agenda, the municipal court update presented by Judge Beth Padilla. Welcome. Is your microphone on?
Oh, that worked.
Okay, there we go.
Just a slight slam. Okay, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to address you again. My name's Beth Padilla, and I'm the municipal court judge. Just celebrated my 4-year anniversary with the city, so it's gone quickly. But wanted to provide some updates about things that are happening in the court, of course, answer any questions that you all have. So first, I want to talk a little bit about our numbers because I think it's important for you to understand what work we're doing and how many people we're seeing in the courtroom. Ms. Odell has graciously pulled all of this data for me. As always, I would not be able to do my job without her. So she's incredibly valuable to the city as well as the court. Looking at our numbers, specifically as it relates to our criminal cases, we are seeing a 24% increase from last year. And so those numbers are, we've had 509 criminal citations so far in 2025, whereas the same time period last year we had 386. I can't necessarily explain why. I think that's a question for other people. But I do think it just speaks to the volume of cases that we're processing and how critical it is that we have a really smooth running court. If you ever stop by on a Monday morning, it can get pretty hectic, especially if we have multiple people in custody, if we have individuals that need interpreters. Some of our individuals actually need 2 interpreters at the same time, so there's a lot of coordination, there's a lot of discussion happening. Ms. Odell is typically on the phone by 6:30 a.m. on Mondays getting everybody arranged for who our court-appointed attorneys are going to be, what time transport's going to bring people over from the jail. So there's a lot that goes into it, and it is working very smoothly at this time. I don't have the exact numbers as to how many court sessions we're having per month, but my gut is probably around 8. So essentially every Monday and then Wednesday and Friday if we have in custodies, because essentially if someone's arrested, we have to see them within 48 hours. We don't hold weekend court because we just don't have capacity for that. So if someone gets arrested on a Friday night, they'll get released at the 48-hour mark over the weekend. We've seen a very slight decrease in animal tickets. We're talking like 14 versus 16, so pretty consistent. Nothing too significant. Slight decrease in our parking tickets, again 130 this year versus 166 last year. Traffic is pretty close to the same. We do have an increase in our land use cases this year. We've had 11 of those as opposed to 8 last year. So we're essentially processing more cases. And still continuing, I think, to meet the needs of the community and ensure that everyone is receiving the justice, essentially, that we can administer within the court. We have seen a significant increase in juveniles, which was what we wanted. And that is in part because the ordinance was modified this year to allow underage possession of alcohol and tobacco and marijuana in our system. So last year we had 4 tickets, and this year so far we have 17, so we are seeing a pretty substantial increase. Our juveniles are coming in the second Monday of the month at 8:30 a.m. Because school starts at 9, so we get them in early and get them out so they can go to school where they need to be. I think this is a huge benefit to the youth. Sometimes if they're in district court, there are bigger dockets, they might be stuck there for a long period of time. We get them in and out and back to school as quickly as possible. And I certainly, when we're scheduling future dates, I'll ask, oh, you're on Christmas break then, that's perfect, you can come in. And so they're not really excited about that, but it's working and making sure that they're in school when they need to be in school. One thing that Ms. Odell and I have started researching and not committed to yet is something called teen court. And so this is an evidence-based system that is used throughout the United States. And it's the structure is more or less as follows. The youth only qualifies if they plead guilty, and then teen court is actually a sentencing component. So there's a teen judge, there's a teen prosecutor, there's a teen defense attorney, and there's a teen jury. And the jury actually will sentence the youth within a rubric, right? They can't say you're going to jail for 2 years. There are very specific criteria. And then the youth is always sentenced to do so many jury duties after that. So the evidence that I have read demonstrates a decrease in recidivism, so fewer youth are coming back in. The youth are typically, they receive the punishment better coming from their peers. So far, Ms. Odell and I have engaged in a WebEx meeting or a Zoom meeting with Los Alamos, New Mexico, to discuss their protocol. They have a very established teen court, and they've graciously shared all of their information with us, so we won't have to start from the beginning if we even decide to do it. And then I have also observed teen court, I believe it was in Lakewood. I was able to observe remotely in the evening and see an entire procedure. So it's really an interesting idea. We would need more juveniles in our system for it to work effectively. So it's something that we're paying attention to, and I'm reaching out to other courts and judges to learn from them to see if it might be a good model in our area. I'm not familiar with any other municipal courts in our area that are doing this, but I think it would be a good opportunity for us to be a leader in that way. So stay tuned. If and when we feel like it's going to make sense, we'll come talk to you about it and make sure that you're all on board with that plan. Let's see, outreach court continues to be successful, I think. So far, we've had 66 people in the program. We have had 14 successfully graduate, and right now we have about 8 that are currently enrolled. So we continue to see people going to inpatient treatment. We continue to see people exploring sober living options once they're released back into the community. So it's a tough population. It's a very high needs population, even though they're being charged with very low level offenses. So I do think we're making progress. Pinion Project continues to be an excellent support of our program, and Carrie Beatty over there just is so helpful. She knows where people are. She's able to tell us if someone's in treatment or they're in rehab or they're on their way. Sometimes there might be someone that's in custody and she'll say, hey, I've got a Medicaid taxi picking them up tomorrow at 6 a.m. Can they get released at 6 instead of 8? Yes. Yes, get them to treatment, get them to rehab if that's what needs to happen. We're continuing to order people to do community service, and they can do that through any agency in the community. We have received some really positive reports from the American Legion specifically, and they've actually asked us to suggest that maybe people go check out community service there. We received a report that one of the defendants in our courtroom did the community service there, and the representative from the American Legion was so impressed they actually offered that person a job. So that's really positive, connecting people that need jobs with agencies that need workers. One other shift, I should tell you real quickly that we also are allowing individuals to use any hours that they're in therapy as community service hours. Most of our defendants need significant substance use treatment. I don't have capacity to order them to do that because I don't have a probation department. We don't have the ability to fund or oversee or monitor that, but if they bring me a note from their therapist saying, I went to 10 group therapy sessions, we count that as community service because the hope is they'll get treatment and we won't see them again. And then finally, our ordinance does require court costs. There had been a practice that sometimes that was being waived. Our ordinance actually requires court costs, so we are now assessing court costs of $32 in all cases, regardless of people's ability to pay that, because that's essentially consistent with what the ordinance says. So if you hear any grumblings about court costs, it's the law, that's why we're doing it. And so I just wanted you all to know that that is happening. So that was a lot of information, but pretty much those are the updates. Things are going well. I don't think we need anything. We are continuing to operate very smoothly. We do have one court clerk out on maternity leave, and then the part-time person has stepped up and worked full-time, which is really, really helpful. The court continues to work smoothly, and I'm really proud of the work that we do. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Judge Padilla, you mentioned that there was an increase in juvenile tickets to 17. Are the parents in general supportive of that process?
Yeah, so I mean, it's new, right? And so we are working out some kinks as far as like, you know, making sure the parent's name is on the summons, things like that, just that because it's sort of a new process. But yeah, I think that in general, parents are The vibe I get from them is they are displeased that their children are in court. They are not impressed with the decisions that their child has made to get them there. But we have not had a juvenile come to court without a parent or guardian. So they're showing up, they're coming. Sometimes we have a parent show up without the kid. That's happened maybe once or twice, and we're like, you need to come back with the kid next time. We need the kid here. But we have had a pretty positive response. Just recently, sort of anecdotally, we had a young man who was not a juvenile, but very young, and he came to court with his mother, and I was explaining to him, if you do treatment instead of community service, that will count, and she was smiling and nodding her head in the back, like, yes, that needs to happen. So I do think that the parents are receptive to what we're doing. And I think just to give a little context, I mean, we're seeing people as young as 12 in the courtroom. I mean, they have a difficult time seeing over the podium. Like, these are very young defendants charged with very low-level offenses, right? They're charged with having alcohol or marijuana at school, typically, is what we're seeing. And so if you can't see over the podium, I'd like you to be in municipal court first, and if you come back again, then maybe you need to go to district court. But these are very young defendants, some of them.
I have another.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just had another quick question, kind of that's a follow-up. It sounds like the teen court concept is like restorative practices type, is it?
It can be, you know, and I think there's a lot of flexibility in how it could be created. What I've seen just through my research and observations is the jury does the sentencing, and they essentially have the ability, they have to sentence to community service, and then there's a bottom, right? Like a floor, and then they can go up to a certain amount. They have to sentence to so many jury duties, and then it can be anything from a letter of apology, perhaps if someone shoplifted from a store. It could be, sometimes there are drug and alcohol programs they're required to do. Sometimes there are pro-social activities they're required to do, like, hey, you have to go to Pinion Project for X number of hours. So it's not necessarily restorative justice, and that the intention is not necessarily to make the victim whole. It's really just to hold juvenile offenders accountable through their peers. And as far as the judges and the attorneys, those are typically not kids that have been in trouble. Those are kids that are sometimes getting extra credit through their civics class at school. So my hope would be to talk to some of the schools and say, hey, would you kick these kids some extra credit if they're willing to do teen court? Sometimes it's kids that are in National Honor Society and need so many hours of volunteer work. Sometimes it's teens that are, you know, say they want to go to law school someday, so they're trying to put together a resume. So my understanding is that the attorneys and the judge those are not necessarily offenders. Those are maybe our more pro-social kids. But I think there's a lot of flexibility there. And sometimes the judges are not there. I will be there. We are not having free-for-all teen court without supervision. So I would absolutely anticipate being there, and I would anticipate that court staff would be there also to make sure this is serious and everybody is taking it very seriously. And the one that I observed in Lakewood, honestly, the young woman who put on the robe and came out, I would have believed she was a real judge. Like, she was very impressive and a little intimidating, even though she was in high school. So I'm excited about the idea.
So I've always been a little skeptical of special courts. I was on a panel one time. We were going to do a mental health court in Montezuma County, and it fell through because they forgot about one thing, and that was the victims. But listening to your program for the youth, I am really excited about it. I think that's going to be an excellent thing. The only thing I heard you say that made me sit up straight was we don't make the victim whole. If they do a shoplifting, I think we need to make sure that we accommodate that. But I really am excited about this program. I think there's nothing better than kids judging kids, because they're typically a lot harder on them than we are. So I'm excited to hear what this does.
So a few things. I will say I was surprised. I was even able to see the jury deliberate, and I mean the floor of the amount of community service these kids had to do was much more than what I would typically order. So I think that you're right. There was sort of a more stringent standard. It's an interesting question when you have something like restitution. I don't know how teen court handles restitution, and so that's certainly something I need to understand before I'd be willing to implement that. So for example, an outreach court for adults, if you have restitution, you don't get to be in the program. because that is a critical component. And so when I say you don't make the victim whole, I guess what I mean to say is, in my mind, restorative justice is like the victim and the offender sit together and do sort of a mediation. It's not necessarily that structure. Instead, it's like you still address the victim, for example, through a letter of apology or something along those lines, but it wouldn't be in a structured like mediation setting.
So Judge Padilla, I'd like to congratulate you on your innovation and your willingness to think outside traditional avenues. And this is a really exciting thing, I think, for all of us as we hear it. You mentioned that you're going to be looking into it more and exploring it. About what do you think your time frame is going to be before you come back to the council before implementation?
You know, I think realistically, because we also have to think about the school schedule. And so what I think I'd like to do is maybe, we're already at the end of the semester, so I'd like to maybe reach out to the schools and the teachers next semester and see where we might be able to get some support for our pro-social kids. And then maybe next school year we could have it up and running, like this is the plan, here's how we're going to do it. We could start before that in the summer, but I'd like to get a little buy-in maybe from the school, if I can. They may just say no. But I mean, really, I'm just asking for some extra credit or something. I think that model has been effective in other communities, and I think I'd like to speak with some of the leaders of some of the student organizations like National Honor Society and Student Council, like some of those organizations that would have like a community service component to it. So I don't exactly know. The other thing is we need enough cases to make it work. So we're certainly seeing an increase, but not every kid is going to want to do it. It's a voluntary program. Some kids are going to want to take their case to trial, and so this is something that you basically say, yes, I stole that stuff from Walmart, and I want to be sentenced by teen court. And then we funnel your sentencing into the teen court. So I think we need a little time to figure out what our numbers might look like and what kind of cases, how do we handle restitution, things like that, because I don't know that yet.
And I have another question, and it's really to you, but it's not to you, because I think you automatically qualified yourself as not being able to answer. But a 24% increase in criminal cases seems to be a pretty significant jump. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering who might be able to have a handle on giving us an answer as why that might be happening.
Well, and I think it's important to remember that we're talking about cases filed in municipal court. We're not talking about overall crime rates. Right? So it's possible that some of our cases can be filed in county court and maybe they're funneling to us instead. So I don't think that the filings in municipal court tie necessarily to an increase in criminal conduct in our community. I think it's really, some of it is law enforcement discretion where they're filing cases. And I think you would have to talk to them about what they're seeing. And you may also need to analyze data from the district court. Like, you know, it is possible that perhaps all cases are going up across the district. I don't know. I haven't looked into that, so I'm not sure. My gut is more cases are being filed with us. But I don't know that for sure. And so I think law enforcement would probably have a better idea of what do the numbers look like, how many offenses are they seeing, and where are they being filed. Any other questions?
Any other questions from council? I just really appreciate seeing you so often. I think it's really helpful for us to hear what you're doing, hear about the things you're thinking about as well for the future, and just kind of tracking, you know, so that it's not just a silo over there. So.
Yeah. Of course, you're always welcome to come by. We're there every Monday at 9. And sometimes Wednesdays and Fridays, but that's a little less predictable. So if you want to see the full action, Monday at 9 is where that happens. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak with you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on our agenda to B, the preliminary discussion regarding rec center taxation issue presented by Drew Sanders, our city manager.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to address the council and by extension the community on this topic. We are not fully ready to provide a full autopsy, as it were, about what occurred, although we will be ready at the next meeting, the December 9th meeting, to provide a full timeline, an accounting and so on of what we're talking about. But I think this is important enough that I needed to address council tonight to let you and the community know that we are addressing this and that we're taking it very, very seriously. Just preliminarily, I want to explain to the council and the community that this is a lot more complicated than it sounds. There's actually two legs to this. First of all, or the first prong as it were, is that we had to get the future tax collection corrected. And so that involved getting that ordinance passed, and then once that ordinance is passed, it takes at least 45 days for our finance department to work with the state and with the businesses to get that implemented. So we're well on track with that. Finance has it, and by the way, just so you know, the only times that a tax rate can be changed throughout the year, even after the ordinance is changed, is on January 1 or July 1. So you can see why there was a sense of urgency to get that part done, and we didn't pay as much attention to the back end. Now that that is in progress, it's time for us to pay attention to the back end, which we've done. We think we've got the body of information that we need. Now we just need to compile that into a understandable mass that we can deliver to you and by extension the community on that. The reality is, and we are relatively certain at this point, that we really only have a couple of options, but we will talk more specifically about what those are at the December 9th meeting, because that will require some council input at that point on what to do next. Depending on what council chooses to do with it, we may have to take future action in January, but if that's the case, we'll be ready for that. So with that being the case, I'm trying on purpose to stay high level and just let the community know what we're working on and that it is coming, but I am open to any questions that council may have right now as we lead up to that point.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to C on our agenda, discussion regarding citywide projects, presented by Drew Sanders, City Manager.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I wanted to come to you this evening because we have a body of work that we need to accomplish coming up. It was mentioned last meeting in talking about water rates and the future of our water system. But I'd like to add to that, there's actually many things we need to do in support of not only our council priorities, but also securing the financial and water security of the city in the future. So I'm coming to you because I don't want to tell you how to handle this other than to say that we have a lot of work and give you an idea of what we're up against. Several of the topics that we need to talk about a little more in depth are short-term rentals, business licensing, water rates, stormwater, and stormwater, we expect to have that master plan into us by the end of the year, but then we have some choices to make depending on how we want to proceed with the stormwater issue, elections timing, of course the rec center tax matter, depending on where we go with that, future annexation especially to the south of town, water rights, storage, and shares. This is separate from just water rates. We need to be talking about the necessity possibly to secure more water rights to set the city up well into the future. And again, on these sort of things, we're looking, between 20 and 50 years into the future. Of course, storage, and then on that. And then also our master and comp plans. And when I talk about that, I'm not talking just water. We have stormwater that's finishing up. In the second quarter of 2026, we expect to get the water master plan completed and back to us. But then we still are due a parks master plan, and then we need to do the overall city master plan, although these other master plans will feed that ultimate city comp plan. So those are all things we need to discuss. And so I'm coming to you for some guidance on how we want to do it. Some of the options are, we can try to eke it out in workshop meetings like this, but our time is generally short and you're probably gonna have to be starting at 5:30 those evenings. Secondly, we can do some things like we did with the natural medicine and have additional workshops. So those are just some of the ideas. Those are just a way we can do it, but not necessarily the way we have to do it. So I pose those questions to you.
I think there are two things. Did you mention the comp plan on your list?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, the Urban Renewal Authority?
Well, that's separate from the comp plan, and so we have got some information on how to handle an urban renewal authority, but really, we do not have the bandwidth right now to go there. That is a totally different project that's gonna take multiple taxing entities to get on board with that, and that's an awful lot of work for us to do that really is outside of what we're even talking about here.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And we don't even have a project necessarily to point that out just yet.
City Manager, do you have a timeline as far as what things have to be done first as far as a time priority? Do we have some certain items that have definite time deadlines that have to happen? Because we have priorities, I think, that we can help develop, but a timeline is going to come in here. So is there some that have to be done like right away?
Well, the only ones that have a clock attached, and depending on what council does, is the rec center tax matter. Other than that, not necessarily.
Thank you.
Although they are all, need to be talked about and addressed.
I mean, I know I've said it several times, and I feel strongly that infrastructure really is key. And by that, I mean a solid plan with deliverables that we can turn to over years after we're long gone. And I guess that the infrastructure around water would be first. And I know stormwater is a big issue, but I would say that that would come secondary to replacing water lines.
Although that actually is in play and occurring based upon the master plan that we do have on that. And so we do have plans on that. That's already in progress. That's separate from what else we need to talk about.
So it seems like the tax issue is the first one that needs to be taken care of. That's what I'm hearing. Is that what everybody's in agreement with? So is the next question really, how do we want to do that? If we want to do it in the work sessions or whether we want to do it in special work sessions? Is that what, anybody want to chime in here?
I think that we should do in a regular work session. I think our options are relatively limited, so I think it's going to be, we're going to hear those from our staff, and then we should be able to come to some kind of decision on what we want to do. So I don't think we need a special work session for that. I think we need special work sessions more to focus on the infrastructure side of things, and then the growth and development side of things that'll help pay for those infrastructure things into the future. So those, to me, in the longer term would be what we would want to spend some time on there, both, I guess, on the nuts and bolts, and then on the how we fund it in the future side. So if we were going to do some extra sessions, I think maybe splitting it that way of future growth and infrastructure needs as the kind of two sides.
Councilor Coleman, there was a question that was raised last meeting regarding the feasibility of lodger's tax, since we're kind of talking a little bit about the upcoming election and things we might want to have on the ballot. Did we get a definitive answer on whether a lodging tax monies can be utilized towards infrastructure if we get the ballot passed to change the charter?
Yeah, well, you currently have a lot of flexibility in what you can use the lodger's tax for. You have a lot of flexibility in using the lodger's tax already. If you want to raise it or change any of the uses specified in the ballot question that approved it, that has to go back to an election. I know there was some discussion of whether we want to put that on the April election. It can also go on the November election. So that would be one of the options. And the question is, and I'll give a little update on the charter amendment process, but it's going to be a fairly long ballot, even as we attempt to reduce and combine some of the questions into one single question. There are a lot of suggested changes. Now, those will be brought to you both in a work session on December 9th, and then it goes first reading on January 13th and second reading and public hearing on January 27th. So there's a lot of time for council to look at the suggested changes and decide whether or not you want to make some or any of them for that matter. So council could necessarily decrease the number of changes, or they can increase, actually, if the public sees it and says, well, what about this or what about that, or some of you come up with some additional ideas. But it would have to be a ballot question, and I mean, I can give you an update on December 9th when we discuss the charter amendments as to how the lodger's tax would necessarily have to be amended, if at all, to spend it on infrastructure.
Pat, I just want to clarify, because the first question we had was the state brought in what lodger's tax could be used for. And we wanted to make sure that if we brought in what we can use it for via our charter, it's still in line with what the state allows.
Yeah, and now the state's action did not amend our lodger's tax. It just gave us additional options.
Yeah, and I think our question was, is water infrastructure part of that additional options? That's what we were trying to
Okay.
clarify.
Yeah, I'll provide that information on December 9th.
Okay.
Can you also share copies of the most recent ballot language that was passed, so we can look
Sure.
at the.
Because it's actually, we went back and looked at it. We've got, before Tabor was adopted in 1992, they had adopted 2 ordinances adopting and then amending the lodging tax. And back then, they didn't have to go to an election. And then I believe there have been 3 elections where they made changes to the lodger's tax. So it's not something that they adopted 30 years ago and haven't touched. It really has come up a number of times, and I believe at least 3 via the election ballot questions since Tabor was adopted. But yeah, I can get you to the latest, because that's the one that is applicable to our current situation.
Thank you.
So, out of curiosity, so what I'm hearing, I just want to be sure that I'm clear on this, is that on the November 9th meeting, we're going to talk about our ballot options and talk about that at a work session? Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah, and
Okay.
we've got the ballot ordinance, the ordinance that sets the ballot title and all the questions drafted. Staff, including Mr. Sanders, we've got to sit down and decide the way it's classified, whether there are any of them that we want to combine into one question. That will shorten the ballot somewhat, but the way it's written now, and you might be thinking about this, I've seen this on a number of other jurisdictions where for the ballot question, they state what the current charter says, and then the amendment. And oftentimes now with track changes, they actually show in the amended section, it shows the cross-outs, the strikeouts, and the additions, so that the people can actually see what you're changing. Some people have said, well, you don't need to put what it currently says. If you just put the track changes in there, they'll be able to see what it says and then see what you're changing all in one document. I've heard other people say, oh, people don't like track changes. They don't want to see crossouts. They want to see what the actual new language is without any addition. So that'll be something that you all will want to discuss and decide how it should be presented. Because certainly if you're showing the existing language and then another paragraph showing the changed language, you got two paragraphs. And that adds to the length of the ballot question and the ultimate ballot. But we also want to, make sure that the public understands what it is we are changing, so they don't get confused. But we'll have that ready for you, well, before December 9th. I want to get it to you like a week early so you can really start looking at it and going through it. But it's a number of changes, and we've tried to combine, or I have already combined as much as I can into one question, because a lot of the changes are typographical, grammatical, spelling, those kind of things. And so rather than list each individual section where we're making that change, I put it into one question and said, all sections of the charter will be amended to eliminate typographical errors, grammatical errors, spelling errors, the gender specific references. A lot of our charter refers to the city manager as he, and so we're trying to make it gender neutral in that regard. And but those can all be done in one question, because I don't think many people are going to object to what is essentially a housekeeping cleanup.
Okay. All right, so we're running out of time, but I guess what you need from us, Drew, is it sounds like we need to get all of the master plans that are kind of in the works together, and then I agree with Councilmember Dobry of have some focused discussions.
Yeah, I think that's what I received, and so we will work towards that.
Okay, great. Thank you both. Okay, we ready to move on to general council discussion? Item D on our agenda. Does any council member have a topic they'd like to bring up?
Real quickly, we have presenters that come up here and present while we're in council, and then we really don't discuss it. We just say thank you very much and they leave. There's times that that's the first I'd ever heard of it, and I would like to hear the other opinion of our fellow council members, because I respect their opinions. So I was thinking that maybe on other items of business would be a good time that if somebody had questions, and I guess this question would be for the mayor, if we couldn't pause for just a moment to see if some council member had something that they want to discuss.
Okay. Do you want to include public comment too? Or
Not necessarily. There's a lot of times I walk out thinking, well, I wonder what everybody else thought. And I just want to hear what the other opinions are, and see if it's as haunting on them as it was me. And just we're so scripted that we don't have a chance to visit with each other. And I thought that would be a good time to do that.
okay. Do we need to formally add that to agenda, or can I administratively, I guess?
No, as the chair, you would just handle that.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, how does everyone else feel, I guess?
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds good. I always interpreted general or council general discussion as exactly that, so.
Okay. Yeah, and then that way we can do it at the end of the night when we've gotten everything. Okay. Thank you, Dennis. Any other items from council?
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to mention that the city of Cortez, or at least several departments within the city, have decided to do a food drive for the Good Samaritan Food Pantry. And I was at the pantry when the first round of donations came before it was really advertised to the public or broadly, even within the organization. And really proud to say that the first round, 177 pounds of food was donated to the Good Samaritan Food Pantry. And that's kind of a big kudos to the city of Cortez and all the people who have been working for that to happen.
Thank you for sharing. That's great.
Councilmember Kiefhoffer, I'm just curious, have you had enough food to meet the demand right now?
We have at this point. It's actually overwhelming in a good way that the community's really stepped up and really had several food drives. I believe on their own. For example, Osprey as an organization brought in 150 pounds of food today. So we see that every single day actually that we're open, that people are bringing that in. However, having said that, it's not going to last long term. We, for example, last Friday served 138 individual families within 2 shifts. And that's a lot of people, and that's a lot of food to go out. If you consider that, people who do shop at the pantry would typically leave with a minimum of a 20-pound box of food, if not, closer to 40 pounds. So as much as food comes in, it goes out just as fast. And I think now that we're in the holidays, we're really noticing that there's an uptick. And so, keep the donations coming. People certainly are appreciative, and it really helps to take the burden off and make for a nice holiday for some of the patrons of the pantry. I think it's really important. So.
All right, we'll end this work session and we'll start our regular meeting at 7:30.